The sunlit set of Good Morning America gleamed with the usual warmth and professionalism as the broadcast returned from commercial. This segment was anticipated for weeks. Prince Harry was in the studio, seated across from co-host Lara Spencer. To discuss his mental health foundation and global outreach programs, the audience buzzed quietly with curiosity. It was meant to be a feel-good interview, a soft spotlight on the Duke of Sussex's post-royal life. But as the cameras began to roll and Lara's piercing gaze met Harry's calm expression, it became clear this would be anything but typical. Lara began gently, speaking about Harry's work with veterans and mental health advocacy, praising his efforts and allowing him space to outline his initiatives. He spoke smoothly, referencing trauma, resilience, and the importance of emotional well-being. The studio nodded along, as did the millions watching at home. But then, with a shift in her tone and posture, Lara signaled a change in direction. Prince Harry, she said, not unkindly but firmly, you've been very vocal about the importance of privacy for your family. Yet you've also entered multi-million-dollar partnerships with Netflix, Spotify, and even written a memoir. How do you reconcile those two opposing actions? Harry blinked. He wasn't taken off guard by the question itself. He had been asked versions of it before, but rarely had it been delivered with such directness on live American television. He gave a careful smile. It's about reclaiming our story, Lara. Everyone, regardless of status, deserves to control how they're represented in the media. We're just using platforms available to us. Lara leaned forward slightly, her tone sharper. But is that really reclaiming, or just rebranding? You've left the royal family citing media toxicity, yet you've stayed in the spotlight by choice. The public sees the contradiction. The silence that followed was thick. The camera didn't cut a weight held on Harry as he shifted in, his seat, his practiced composure starting to falter. We've never said we wanted to disappear, he said slowly. We wanted safety and the ability to speak openly. Lara didn't let go. So you wanted to escape that media, but not all media, because critics would argue you've traded palace protocol for Hollywood deals. That you've monetized the very trauma you criticized. A visible flicker crossed Harry's face. That's a gross oversimplification. There's context that gets lost in those arguments. I'm sure there is, Lara said, her voice cool but unwavering. But context doesn't stop headlines, and you of all people know that. By this point, social media was igniting. Viewers began posting clips in real time. Harry squirming, Lara pressing, #Prince Harry, #Lara Spencer, and #GMA confrontation began trending within minutes. The contrast between his royal upbringing and Lara's American assertiveness was striking and irresistible to the audience. Everyone watching could tell this wasn't going to be a safe, sanitized PR opportunity. This was something different, something raw, The producers in the control room whispered to each other, some raising their eyebrows, unsure whether to intervene or let it unfold. Lara was breaking the unspoken rule of treating royal guests with excessive deference. But she wasn't being disrespectful, she was being journalistic. Harry tried to steer the conversation back to his charity work. What we're doing now is about impact. The causes we support benefit from visibility, and that's what matters. Lara nodded, but stayed on message. Visibility is great, but critics argue that your brand now relies on victimhood, on grievances. And that raises the question, are you truly moving forward, or are you packaging the past as entertainment? That hit hard. Prince Harry's jaw tightened for a split second, and he took a longer pause before answering. People are entitled to their opinions, but they haven't walked in our shoes. They haven't lived our reality. A few in the studio clapped lightly, but even that sounded unsure. Lara didn't respond immediately. She simply allowed the silence to settle, letting the audience absorb the weight of the moment. By the time the show cut to commercial, the energy in the room had shifted dramatically. Prince Harry's polished media armor had taken a few noticeable dents, and Lara Spencer. She had just delivered one of the most unexpected, fiery, and consequential interviews of the year right in the heart of morning television. The next part of the segment, still to come, promised to push even deeper into controversy. And if the first half was any indication, the gloves were already off. When Good Morning America returned from the break, the tension was palpable. The studio lights were just as bright, but the mood had shifted. Prince Harry, once visibly relaxed, now carried the weight of Lara Spencer's piercing questions like a suit of armor that had begun to crack. The live audience, usually warm and engaging, now sat still unsure whether they were witnessing morning news or history in the making. Lara wasted no time getting back into it with the professionalism of a seasoned broadcaster. She offered a brief transition. "We've touched on the importance of mental health and your global initiatives," she said, "but I'd like to pivot back to something that's been a dominant theme in your narrative of a royal family." Prince Harry straightened slightly, a flicker of weariness showing. "Sure," he replied cautiously. Your Oprah interview," Lara continued, "was groundbreaking, emotional, powerful, and for many, eye-opening. You and Meghan described neglect, racism, and abandonment. But what's come up since then? From royal aides and sources close to the palace are claims that much of the context was left out or, worse, misrepresented. How do you respond to that?" Harry sighed lightly. "We spoke our truth. That interview wasn't meant to destroy anyone. It was our attempt to be heard for the first time, *. Lara raised an eyebrow. "But you've been heard through Netflix, Spotify, your memoir Spare, dozens of interviews. And with each one, it seems more grievances surface. Is there a point where your truth becomes a brand instead of a burden?" The blow landed with precision. Harry looked visibly unsettled, as if he'd been preparing for criticism, but not this level of intellectual challenge. "We're not trying to create a brand of victimhood," he responded. "We're trying to empower others through transparency." Lara nodded slowly. "Then let's be transparent. After stepping down, reports say the late Queen offered you and Meghan a role within the Commonwealth, allowing you to serve from outside the UK. That proposal was declined. Can you clarify why?" Harry's face twitched for a moment. "There were complications. It wasn't that simple." "But the letter exists," Lara said matter-of-factly, as she gently held up a printed document. "This is a verified internal memo showing exactly that offer. The palace kept it quiet to avoid further public fallout. Why reject a solution that gave you purpose without the pressures of full royal life?" The studio fell utterly silent. The paper fluttered slightly in her hand, but Harry didn't reach for it. His eyes narrowed. "Sometimes, solutions offered come with strings attached. We wanted autonomy, something we never truly had." And yet Lara pressed, "You've stepped into another system, haven't you? One ruled by Hollywood media contracts and algorithms. Autonomy is one thing, but are you truly free or simply trading one institution for another?" The audience couldn't believe it. The co-host had done what no one else had, addressed the contradiction. Piece by piece, live on air. Harry's armor was gone. His tone softened. "We didn't plan everything perfectly. We've made mistakes, but everything we've done is rooted in the hope of doing something meaningful." Lara, let the moment breathe, but not for long. There's a fine line between meaning and marketing. Your critics argue that you're not holding up a mirror to the world, you're holding it to yourself, asking people to applaud the reflection. Harry blinked. That was the final jab. Not vicious but poignant, real. His lips parted as if to respond, but instead he paused. "I think that's for people to decide," he finally said. "We're just telling our story. If people find truth in it, good. If they don't, that's okay too." The producer signaled that time was up. Lara turned back to the camera with her signature poised smile. "Prince Harry, thank you for your time. We hope your efforts in mental health continue to spark important conversations." Harry nodded. "Thank you, but the atmosphere as he left the set was different from when he arrived. He wasn't escorted with fanfare or smiles. He walked quietly, his team trailing him, murmuring in his ear. Whether he realized it or not, this appearance wasn't just another media stop. It was a defining moment. Online, the reactions were explosive. Some accused Lara of ambushing him. Others praised her for finally saying what the public had been thinking, but no one dared ask. The interview replayed across networks, podcasts, and headlines for days. And through it all, one thing was certain. Lara Spencer didn't just interview Prince Harry, she challenged the story, questioned the brand, and, in the process, forced the world to look at a royal narrative in a whole new light.